pemirsa, selamat datang di program Bicara Antara TV. Your Excellency, welcome to the program. Let me start with, could you tell me the significance of Africa Day, often celebrated every year by many countries in African continent? What's so important about that?
Well, first let me start by thanking Antara for facilitating this interview. On behalf of the African embassies and the African community in Indonesia, I would like to say terima kasih.
Thank you.
Secondly, I would like to thank you because today I want not only to speak to you, but to the Indonesian community at large, so that they understand what Africa Day is all about. Africa Day is very, very significant, and this year, 2013, it is a special celebration because we celebrate 50 years of the establishment of the Organization of African Unity, commonly known as OAU, which was transformed in 2002 to the African Union, AU. We celebrate our freedom. We celebrate our unity. I am so glad that I'm in Indonesia. Indonesia understands unity in diversity. African continent has got many countries, but the Organization of African Unity, the AU, brings the diverse African countries together in unity. So the significance of this celebration, it brings together the African communities. Organization of African Unity. It's unity. And secondly, it also tells us about the liberation of the continent. So two major aspects of the celebration is the unity and also the liberation of the community.
How far does the African Union meet its vision to play a dynamic role in the global arena?
Well, I'm very happy because now people are saying this is Africa's moment, because a lot has happened in Africa. Africa now, one, and first and foremost, Africa is united. Secondly, most of Africa is independent. And thirdly, Africa is not only liberated politically, but also economically. For the first time, you hear about Africa booming. In the past, it was a hopeless continent. It was very negative about Africa, darkness, the dark continent of Africa. But now you read the newspapers, you listen to the media, you go to the social media, everything has changed. Right. They are talking about the fast-growing economies in Africa. They are talking about the booming Africa. We look at the economic crisis which has affected America and Europe, but Africa is on the go. In spite of all these things that are happening all over the global world, Africa is on the go. So Africa is achieving its goal. It's now liberated politically. It's now going to liberate itself economically as well. I think as we celebrate the Jubilee celebration of Africa, we are so proud of what we have done as a continent.
How does the vision and mission of the African Union meet the spirit of the Asia-Africa Conference, or known as the Bandung Conference, so that Asia and Africa can work together to reach their common goals?
Thank you very much, because for us as African ambassadors, African embassies in Indonesia, we are so privileged that we are in the country where member founders of the Africa-Asia Conference met in Bandung in 1955. It is indeed a privilege for us, and we don't take it for granted. The vision for the Bandung, for the conference in Bandung, was to liberate the continents of Asia and Africa.
Right.
It's interesting that in 1955, of the countries that attending the Bandung Conference, only 6 were independent. But today, especially when we had the 2005 meeting, the Africa-Asia Conference, which we had here in Jakarta in 2005, almost all the countries were liberated. So in itself, it has achieved, the spirit of Bandung has achieved the liberation of African and Asian countries. First and foremost, is the spirit of freedom. Secondly, is the spirit of unity. When the African and the Asian countries came together, they bridged the difference. They bridged the sea between them, and they came together determined not to be used by the East or the West, but to come to be a strong, neutral force which will look at issues objectively. I'm glad that the non-aligned movement was formed as a result of this spirit, the Bandung spirit. Going further, I would like to say, if you are aware that the Bandung spirit, the Bandung conference took place in 1955.
Yeah.
The Organization of African Unity, which I'm talking about, took place in 1963, 8 years after Bandung. So you can see that what happened in Africa had a very, very important message which they took from Bandung. And you find that most of the founders of the African Union, the Organization of African Union, you have countries like Egypt, you have countries like Morocco, you have countries like Nigeria. Most of those people who attended, of those countries who attended the Bandung conference, are the ones who were very, very active in the formation of the Organization of African Unity. So you can see that spirit, it transmitted into Africa. So Africa and Asia, this is why we always talk about our common historical backgrounds. Both of us, we suffered from colonialism, but both continents decided enough is enough. We'll stand for our own rights. Not only our rights politically, but economically. I must quickly say, being in Indonesia, I've been here since 2004, and I've seen Indonesia grow so rapidly from 2004 to today, 2003. And this is what you are going to see in Africa. Africa is going to grow. You will never recognize what is actually happening in that continent. So the vision of Bandung, the vision of the OAU are intertwined. I would like to say they are like joined by an umbilical cord in a mother's womb.
All right. Audience, we'll be back after this break.
Portal berita antara news.com menyajikan informasi utuh dan kredibel.
Indonesia, one click away.
Transformasi tahap pertama tahun 2012.
Antara PR Wire menyebarluaskan press release baik di wilayah nasional maupun internasional. Antara Publishing, unit bisnis Antara yang terpercaya dan siap memproduksi penerbitan dan percetakan. Antara Foto mendistribusi dan mengkoleksi beragam foto berita dan peristiwa.
Antara telah diakses 39 kantor berita di dunia. Kondisi ini lebih membuka peluang Antara untuk terus membangun citra Indonesia di mata dunia.
Antara TV mendedikasikan diri menjadi televisi berita yang menyajikan berita akurat dan terpercaya.
Your Excellency, Indonesia is a country with the sustainable growth of economy, even during the other part of the world are hit by economic crisis. Indonesia, with abundant natural resources and emerging technology development, is also conducive to investment businesses. How does the African Union take advantage of the conditions?
First, let me just give you a summary about the position, the situation in Africa right now, as far as the economy is concerned. there is a report which was made by the World Bank where they acknowledged that from 2000 until now, there are about 20 countries in Africa whose economy is doing very well. In spite of the global economic recession that has hit most of the other continents, Europe and the America. I'm glad to say that the commodity prices have really assisted Africa to be able to deal with the situation, the economic situation in the African countries. Also, now Africa has got a big percentage of the middle class which can afford to buy things from their own countries. Right. It's like in Indonesia here, you also have a very big growing middle class with finances which are able to beef up the economy. Africa has also followed very good macroeconomics in their respective countries. The African countries, they are doing very well. The African countries, I must say, almost all African countries are having elections. The African countries have managed to empower their people, and this has helped their economies to grow. While we have other continents that are suffering, Africa is doing very well. And we must not forget that Africa is very, very rich in terms of resources. You talk of oil, you talk of diamonds, you talk of gold, you talk of some special, those unique minerals that cannot be found anywhere else but in Africa. And now the African countries, having been freed, having been liberated politically, they are now focusing on their economy. In the past, the thing which had really affected Africa was that most of their minerals, most of their resources were being taken away, and they were enriching other countries. But now Africa is insisting that the investors who are coming to Africa must add value to whatever Africa has, to the benefit of the people. This has helped the employment rate. So many people in Africa are employed as they work within the manufacturing companies, the mining companies, in all the sector. Agriculture, Africa is doing very well in agriculture. In spite of the climatic change and the climatic conditions, Africa has worked as a group. You see what Africa is doing, which is also very useful. Africa is emphasizing on regions. So in West Africa, you have ECOWAS. In Southern Africa, you have SADC. In North Africa, you have the Community of Maghreb. You have the COMESA, you have COMESA. These regional groupings, they have come up with policies to help each other, to beef up growth in a number of sectors. For instance, right now, we are talking about Zimbabwe and Zambia. They will be hosting the United Nations World Tourism Organization in August. It's because these countries have come together. You have a transfrontier park between Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. In ECOWAS, you have groups, they are working together. And this has also helped Africa. And also Africa has become more Pan-Africanist than before. It's the Renaissance, we are talking of the African Renaissance. Renaissance not only in politics, but in the way they do business. And this has encouraged a number of companies to go to Africa, including Indonesia. We are very happy that recently we had your president accompanied by about 100 business people going to Nigeria. We have had a lot of foreign ministers, the ministers of trade, and your minister, Minister Honorable Gita, has been to Africa. Yeah. You see, is this recognition that there's something which is happening in Africa. And also you have the Chinese, you have the Indians, you have so many countries now who are doing business in Africa. So Africa is also looking at Asia, because right now we want to say Asia is the continent which is doing very well, and Africa is the next one. You look at Asia, you look at Indonesia. Indonesia has really grown. As I was saying, I've seen it grown economically. And we have a number of delegations who come to Indonesia. Every year we have African delegations coming for the Jakarta International Expo, delegations from Somalia, from Sudan, from Egypt, and they come here. And as a result, we have a number of companies, Indonesian companies, that are working in Africa. We have Petamina in Libya. We have Indofood, Indorama in Nigeria. We have Medico in Egypt. We have Indofood in Egypt as well. There are so many companies from Indonesia who are investing, who are working in Africa. You'll be surprised that when you go to Africa, you see Indomie in the supermarkets. You go to Africa in the supermarket, you buy Indomie from Indonesia, made in Indonesia. You go to a boutique, you find a batik shirt made in Indonesia, because there is a lot of trade happening between Indonesia and Africa. And incidentally, I always say we must look into it. There is a stronger relationship between Africa and Indonesia, because the things that we do are similar, very similar. Our trade relations, the way we cook our food. I was talking to a colleague of mine who is Indonesian, who went to Nigeria with the president, and they were saying the way they cook their vegetables is more or less like the way we do it, because there are these similarities, because we are one and the same people. This is why our forefathers, the founders of Asia Africa Conference and OAU, decided to come together to bridge the distance that has been created by the seas, because we are one and the same people. So, my sister, let me tell you that Africa is really taking advantage of the growth that is happening in Indonesia, and we are happy that Indonesia is willing to share with us their experiences. We have a number of our students who have come to learn in Indonesian institutions. We have lots from Somalia who are here. And at the same time, we also have a number of Indonesian students. We have gone to Algeria, we have gone to Egypt, we have gone to Sudan to learn from their experiences as well. So it's not only in the trading field that there is these synergies with Indonesia, but throughout all sectors. Agriculture, you look at agriculture, you look at education, you look at health. My sister, you can see this batik I'm putting on. It's African, it's from Africa. But you go to Georgia, they also have something similar. It's different, but it's in similar. Yes.
In Georgia.
Yeah, in Georgia, they also have something like this. So you can see there's so much that is common between Indonesia and Africa.
Okay. I want to talk a bit about the upcoming events, because Indonesia will host two biggest economic events, APEC in September and WTO in December, and that might affect the economic development in the world. So how do you expect from Indonesia as the host country and from the upcoming results of the two events?
Indonesia has played a key critical role in bringing together organization meetings, and we have to acknowledge you have done very well, and we have also managed to have key people in these organizations. APEC and WTO means a lot to us. When you look at the developing countries, when you look at WTO, there has been things have not moved the way we have expected them to move, because there are differences in the way the organization should go on. And we feel that Indonesia hosting it understands us, understands the developing community, the African countries. And we believe that Indonesia is going to raise issues which will also benefit us. But it's not Indonesian alone. We have to work together as a team, as the developing countries. And this is the spirit which we like about Indonesia. The spirit of Bandung is seen throughout all assets of Indonesian hosting of events. We are happy and we are hopeful that Indonesia, which has proved itself, especially last year when you chaired the ASEAN, when Indonesia chaired the ASEAN, there were so many positive developments that happened. So we believe by chairing APEC and by the WTO, Indonesia will initiate a number of positive measures that will benefit not only Indonesia, not only Asia, not only Africa, not only the developing world, but the global community as a whole. The issues are very technical. My sister, I cannot go into them right now, but just the knowledge that Indonesia has got the interests of the community, the international community at heart is very, very satisfying. And we believe that Indonesia will benefit the community, will benefit APEC, will benefit WTO. They will come up with very good suggestions. And us, especially as the African ambassadors and the African embassies here, we are prepared, we are willing to work with Indonesia so that when our countries come to these organizations, there is substantial, tangible, concrete measures that come from the conferences.
How do you convince the peoples up to the grassroots level that those efforts will benefit them? And how do you involve them in activities towards reaching prosperity?
It is very difficult to convince people, especially if they don't see tangible results on the ground. But we never lose heart. My mother used to tell me that it takes 9 months for a baby to be born in the womb. And I know that in Asia, you always say a journey starts with one step. And I think that is what is important. We should focus on laying that foundation. One day, they will reap the efforts, the results, the fruits of these efforts that are being made. So what Indonesia has been doing and is doing, which I'm really impressed with, is that right now you go to, you travel in Jakarta, you see all these billboards, all these posters. They're trying to tell the people, to sensitize the people of these important issues. I've also watched your programs on TV. You have a number of debates where people discuss these issues. It is helpful. You cannot reach everyone, but those you reach and those who understand what is happening, I'm sure they do appreciate. This is why when people are here, you find the Indonesian, they are dancing, they are promoting, they are active, taking part in what is happening. You go to Manado, there's a conference in Manado, you find the people there are active, they are happy, they're smiling, they are receiving the delegates. I think this is the way we start. But as you rightly say, people want to see tangible economic benefits from whatever happens. And I'm sure the Indonesian appreciate that the Indonesian of 2004 and the Indonesian of 2013 is no longer the same. There are differences. They may not affect them completely, but they are definitely differences.
Audience will be back after this break.
Bicara, bincang-bincang antara, tayangan dialog yang diproduksi di studio Antara TV dengan tokoh-tokoh dunia.
From Antara Studio on Jalan Merdeka Selatan, Jakarta, we are here, especially Mrs. Alice,
to talk not only to Antara but to the public of Indonesia.
Your Excellency, among the objectives of the African Union is to work with relevant international partner to in the eradication of preventable diseases and promotion of good health on the continent. So this objective is in line with one of the MDGs objective established by the United Nations in 2000. How do you see Indonesia and Africa can work together in dealing with MDGs, preventable diseases in particular, and how do Indonesia and Africa convince themselves that they can work on the post-2015 agenda of MDGs?
MDGs are very important, especially as they bring development. not only to Asia, not only to Africa, but to the international community. In Africa, we have been doing all we can. We have put measures within the African Union institutions where we assist each other to meet our MDGs. One of the major MDGs that we are looking at is poverty reduction. And I'm glad to say with the economic boom that is happening in Africa, the level of poverty has really gone down. I was talking about the World Bank report. It was saying that in 2025, they feel that the level of poverty in Africa is really going to come down. And you see what is happening in Africa in the reduction of poverty. When there is a boom in the economy, we try to reach the grassroots people. We have what we call the Africa Economic Community, which tries to help these regions, these countries. You see the measures, the policies that are made at the AU filter back into the regions, filter back into individual countries. And we have our secretariat in Addis Ababa, where we have full-fledged departments that deal with these specific issues so that they help the African countries. Poverty reduction, we are also talking about agriculture policies, because most of our African countries, their economies are agricultural based, and that's where you find the farmers who work in the fields. They are being tried to assist their courses, their lectures, their universities, their colleges, which are educating these farmers to be able to yield more yields from the ground. We are talking also in the MDGs, we have gender. I'm so happy that Africa has done quite well in promoting gender equality. In my country, we are going to have, in Zimbabwe, we are going to have elections soon, and we had a constitution, a new constitution, and it's calling for 50%, 50-50, 50 men, 50 women parliamentarians. I'm aware that Indonesia is also doing the same in parliament, but you are doing 30 and 70.
Yeah.
Yes, but you see, these are some of the similarities we have, that we are trying to meet the MDGs by trying to develop the gender, trying to develop the girl woman, the girl child. And we believe that we are going to succeed. I am quite impressed by my neighbor, South Africa. South Africa has done extremely well in promoting women in parliament, in key cabinet ministries. We are far ahead of most European and American countries. Africa is far ahead in meeting this MDG. Also, we are talking about the preventative diseases. I'm also happy that Africa is doing a lot, especially on HIV/AIDS. They are trying not only to prevent, but to help people to abstain from having relations which spread HIV/AIDS. And they are also going local. By this I mean that they are encouraging people to eat some of the things that were eaten previously. And we are also calling upon the developed world to assist us in getting the medicine. You know, it's so interesting that sometimes you feel not enough is being spent in trying to find solution for these diseases. But we are happy the level of HIV/AIDS in Africa has really gone down, because there is a time when it was really high. But this is one of the MDGs that we are trying to accomplish before 2050. And I'm glad that Africa is in the forefront. We are reminded that if we are united and if we work together, we will achieve what we want. And I believe that the unity that we are celebrating today, the unity between Africa and Asia, that unity helps us to share our experiences. I am aware that we have had people who have come from Africa. They have met with the Ministry of Women and Gender here. They have shared ideas. And there are also people from here who have gone to Africa to also see how Africa is dealing with some of these diseases. And this is the spirit which we need, because our people will benefit from these tangible, concrete measures to try and find solutions for challenges that we face in life.
Okay, I'm sure we will be delighted to hear that. So, Excellency, thank you so much for joining me. And audience, thank you for watching Bicara.